In the introduction, we mentioned that, very often, each distribution has its own policy. Sometimes it prevents you from obtaining certain software. This is not due to the fact that there's no sufficient resources to maintain this software, but because its license doesn't allow it to be distributed in a certain way. That's why, for example, the Adobe software such as Flash Player, Reader, or some web browser plugins are not available in the repositories. The licensing requirements simply don't allow it. So, some Adobe software may be unavailable in a certain Linux distribution, either because Adobe doesn't allow it, or because it wouldn't be in line with the distribution's policy. Each distribution has a set of unofficial repositories. They are tested. Most of them are maintained by people associated with the development of a given distribution. These repositories contain software which, for some reason, either because of the policy or because of the license, cannot be put in the main repository. For Fedora, there are two repositories. These are RPM Fusion and Livna. The first one contains software which doesn't meet the criteria of free open-source software. Nevertheless, it is maintained by the developers of Fedora. The Livna repository is now probably the only one which contains software for decrypting commercial DVD videos with region locks. For legal reasons, this software can't be placed in the RPM Fusion repository. To install these repositories, you need to go to one of the pages mentioned in the slide below, rpmfusion.org and rpmlivna.org, and click on the appropriate link. This will launch a repository management tool, which will install the package and adjust repository settings to the system configuration. After that, all applications included in the repository will be visible and available for the user. There's no need to restart the computer or switch users. The recommended repositories for the OpenSUSE system are Pacman and Contrib. Both are available on the list of the so-called semi-official repositories. The name may sound strange, but it describes the status quo well. These repositories are supported by OpenSUSE and available in the YAST system management tool. They're easily available, and you don't need to look for them on the web. Everything can be found within the YAST tool. You can use this program to add more repositories. If you have an ATI or NVIDIA graphics card, you have to activate a corresponding repository. This will automatically install drivers for your video card. OpenSUSE also provides repositories with the latest version of web browsers or Office software suites. This software is already tested by the developers, but because it's made available before the start of the next release lifecycle, the user must install it at his own risk, so to speak. If any user should need the very latest version of a package, it can be found on the semi-official repositories. In some cases, a given repository is not supported by the official distribution. For example, some time ago, if you wanted to install Kadu under OpenSUSE, you had to add the repository of its developer. Similarly, if you want to install the Flash plugin in Fedora, you must add an appropriate repository, following the instructions which are available on the software developer's website. On such a website, under the Download section, you can choose the specific version of the software dedicated for your system and distribution. More often than not, you'll also find there instructions for adding a corresponding repository. When it comes to Fedora repositories, the link is usually given on a software manufacturer's website. OpenSUSE provides a so-called one-click install. This is a very interesting feature, which unfortunately isn't available in other distributions. Developers place a simple button on their site. When you click on it, all needed repositories will be first added. And then all necessary software along with its dependencies, which may come from the main repository or some additional ones, will be automatically downloaded and installed. This is a very convenient mechanism. The OpenSUSE distribution greatly simplifies the way in which user-made applications can be distributed through private repositories. Both in Fedora and OpenSUSE, all changes require administrator privileges. At a certain point of the installation, the system will ask you for your login and password to confirm that your account has needed permissions. To work with repositories, you need to have administrator privileges. This is often the case when it comes to binary packages. On the other hand, even a regular user can install software in their home directory using the source code. Binary packages may or may not require additional user privileges. It depends on the configuration of the package. Some of them can be installed in your home directory. Some applications must be installed in the root directory. At this point, administrator privileges are required. If an application is installed from the repository, it will always require administrator privileges.